I watched Uncut Gems last night. It's Adam Sandler's latest movie on Netflix. And it's a very chaotic, anxiety-inducing kind of jittery movie. It was a good movie, I must admit. I really liked it. It's a movie that you either like it or you hate it. It's a polarizing kind of movie. And I think Adam Sandler did a great job, and so did the directors and the editing and all that. Now, anyway, this is not a movie review, but this is kind of an analysis, a comparative analysis of that movie, because as I was watching that movie, I couldn't help thinking of analogies between what was happening in that movie, the lead character, Adam Sandler, of course, the way his life was unfolding, his decision-making process, and the way he was handling challenges and the results, to what I feel a lot of the businesses and brands out there do, or the decision-making that goes into it. And I thought, okay, let me do a video and just sort of do a comparison, or rather point out things that I think that small business owners maybe can take note in this film. This is the life of this guy, Adam Sandler. Of course, he's the Jewish jewelry kind of businessman. So it's all about his life. He has a ton of debt, and these debt collectors are after him. And the way he hustles and how he sort of gets his hands on this rock, right? This opal rock from Ethiopia. And then he tries to then get that to an auction. But in the meanwhile, yeah, the Safdie brothers, I mean, they did a great job. This Adam Sandler's acting is fantastic. And his decision-making process is so bad. It's like he is compulsive. He is driven to make mistakes. He is driven to bring problems into his lives and the way he handles these challenges is so bizarre. And of course, spoiler alert, I might actually say what happens at the end. So if you haven't seen this movie, maybe I don't know, maybe not. Okay, but what I really felt was happening in this movie, I see that happening with businesses and brands all the time, right? So when businesses are faced with challenges, the priorities, what happens with their priorities is what really intrigues me, because people know that their business is their breadwinner, right? It's what puts food on their table. It's what takes care of their families, of themselves, of their kids if they have kids, and all. It's all about handling situations and responding to challenges and chaos. Now, in this movie, Adam Sandler's character is sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of situation, right? So he needs to, he owes 150 grand or something like that to his brother-in-law. And that guy gets some goons and collectors and tries to get his money back, right? So Adam Sandler does, I mean, his world has a lot of money in it, right? He's got a beautiful house. He's got a Mercedes that he drives around. In fact, he has an apartment. I don't know if he owns it or if he rents it. And his shop itself, he's got a lot of assets in that shop. He's got jewelry that he's trying to sell. He's got diamonds and stuff. And yet, he takes massive risks and tries to bet on sporting bets, right? On games, on basketball games, and so that he can have a big win and that he can use that money to pay off the debt collectors. But these guys are serious, right? They are after him. They are dangerous guys. And one after the other, Adam Sandler's character makes these decisions which are so scary. It's like you're watching this film and you keep thinking, why are you doing this, right? He gets his hands on a little bit of money instead of paying off so that he can at least, appease the debt collectors for a little while. He puts that money into bets. Now, in business, a lot of people do that. Their priorities are warped, right? So they know that they need to invest in the business. They know that if a business is going flat or it's sort of tapering off, so they have had a little bit of success, so they buy a house or whatever, clothes, gadgets, and cars, maybe they go on travel. So they get used to spending money. Then, as happens in businesses, ups and downs, the business starts to slowly maybe plateau or even decline. And that's when they are already used to this kind of lifestyle, so they start taking on debt to continue that lifestyle. And ultimately what happens is there's a situation where this thing catches up, and that's why a lot of the businesses they go bust, and businessmen go out of business because they cannot sustain that kind of lifestyle when their business goes bad, and they don't have the money to invest in the business to bring it back to life. But if you look at the kind of pacing of what they do, they still continue spending on things that are non-essential, luxuries, right? They still keep fueling spending on gadgets or luxuries or travel instead of investing in business. Okay, maybe that is a bit of an extreme case, but let's take a normal case scenario too. A lot of times, business owners know that they do need to invest in business, right? Invest in marketing, invest in branding, invest in creating an image, invest in making sure that when whatever wave they're riding starts to sort of wane, there will be something, a plan B to fall back on. What that means is, let's say that they are getting a ton of traffic from online, right? So social media, their website, so on and so forth, and getting a lot of sales, even if they're brick and mortar. And they're at the mercy of Google. So if their rankings tank, then that business is going to dry up. The revenue is going to dry up. So when the going is good, they need to really think through and say, I need to set aside 10%, 20%, 30% of that revenue and invest in maybe building the brand image, building the brand kind of persona, right? Making sure that when the traffic dries out from Google, they do have another source of traffic, another source of customers. So it's like not putting all the eggs in one basket, right? So, but instead, what do they do? A lot of them. Now, maybe not you, maybe you, you know this, and it's an obvious thing, and maybe you do, take your eggs out of Google's basket and put it elsewhere. Maybe you're building a persona online, you're building an email newsletter list. Maybe you have a lot of following on Twitter. You are doing things so that you can dip into that additional resources when your primary kind of business revenue path sort of dries up. But I'm talking about those people who don't, and their priorities. And there was this example, a great example, of a client. And listen, I'm not out there to name and shame, so I'm not going to mention who the client is. But facts are facts, right? I mean, these things happen, and it's okay to talk about them. So this is a client that I knew for many years. We've done some work for them, and with a lot of clients, I sort of become friends, right? We keep in touch, we get on the phone, they call me now and then for advice, and I do give a lot of free advice. So it's almost friendly. And so this client So we built a brand for them, and they had a great, and this was a few years back, and then they had a rise, and the business was going great. And then apparently, it started to taper off. So I get this call, and I'm talking to this client or ex-client, and they tell me that, things are really bad because they lost their rankings and they got penalized by Google, and the usual story, right? And how now, what do I do, and so on and so forth. Now, I know for a fact because I'm friends with this client on Facebook, and I've seen, photos of quite recently, just recent before that call, of this client's new, relatively new Range Rover, and how he's replaced the wheels, right? Got this huge, beautiful rims and so on and so forth. It probably cost this guy $5,000 for those wheels, maybe more. So anyway, that was the background of what I had in my mind. And then as I was talking, so I said, guess what? I mean, if you want to really have some quick wins, you got to go into advertising. You got to put some money into advertising. Facebook advertising, I think, would be the best right now. Sink in $5,000 to $10,000 so that at least you can get out of that slump. And it's not a long-term strategy, but at least, I mean, if it works, of course, it has to become a long-term strategy, but at least to get you sort of going. So he says, well, I don't have, $5,000 right now to spend on that. I don't have money to pay an agency, not ours, okay? We don't do Facebook advertising or anything of that sort. We are a brand building agency. We're not a marketing agency per se. Well, we do a little bit of marketing, but not. Anyway, this is not, I wasn't telling him that we would do it for him. I was just advising as a friend to find a company, an agency that does Facebook marketing so that they can try and get some returns. And it was like, no, $5,000, $10,000, no. And my first question was, man, you just bought some new wheels on your Range Rover, which you bought last year, which must have cost you a lot of money, right? And it's like, yeah, it's because of that. And I say, well, what were you thinking before that, right? And I saw some pictures. You were on a holiday a few months back in the Caribbean. Oh, well, I had to take care of my family. Of course. Don't get me wrong. I travel a lot. I travel with my wife, with my kids, and travel is a big part of our lives every year. 2, 3, sometimes 4, 5 times we travel, but it's all planned. It's not, we don't travel at the expense of investing in business, right? You must have known, and from the story that he was telling me, this thing was happening for a few months now. So they got penalized 6, 7, 8 months ago. And then, so the momentum slowly shifted. So you must have known what was coming, right? So you must have, anyway, long story short. And the topic of this video, right? So I'm getting carried away here. But I get really infuriated with these kind of things, and how business owners don't really realize, what's at stake. So in this movie, this guy gets $150,000, right, by selling this stone, this opal that he got from Ethiopia for cheap. And then there's this really pivotal scene. This really, I was like, I paused the video, the film, and I said, oh my God. And I was looking at my wife, and well, my wife hated the film because it's so raw, and it's, it'll put you on your edge, right? So anyway, I turned to my wife and I said, you know what? This is what I see every day. This is a scenario that happens in business, right? Anyway, so he's sitting with this guy who's just bought this rock off him, this basketball player, and Kevin Garnett, right? He plays a cameo, actually a big role in this film. So he gets this $155,000, so $65,000. And outside, you can see on the cameras, these debt collectors are actually in the lounge of his shop. It's a jewelry shop, right? So they're there. He's got security cameras everywhere. And he then says, like, he actually owes them $150,000, right? So the first thing he needs to have done is to shake this guy's hand, send him off, invite the guy, not the goons, but the guy who he owes money to, his brother-in-law actually, invite him in and hand over the money, get him sign off, whatever it is, or maybe it's just a shake hand and just say, that's it, I'm so sorry, here's your money, right? Instead, he sort of goes off the bend and he says, I'm going to make a lot of money out of this. And this guy, Kevin Garnett, is going to play a game that night. And he believes that with that stone, he's going to win. And there's some few scenes before that reinforces that. So Adam Sandler says, you know what? You're going to win. I'm going to bet on you. And it's going to, okay. So he takes that money and then there's a bit of shenanigan and then he passes it through the window to his assistant, who is also his lover, kind of mistress kind of thing in the movie, played by Julia Fox. Really well done. And then starts this kind of nerve-wracking kind of third act of the film. And so that Julia Fox goes off to put that money, and then this guy, Kevin Garnett, takes off. And those guys, the debt collectors, there's a scene, so he locks them up in that kind of security doors and watches the game. And do you know what? Priorities are important in business, right? So the lessons are the following. First of all, business priorities. Even if your business is going well, always, always, always take 10% or 20% of whatever you make, even at the expense of paying bills, right? Oh, well, you need to pay your bills, but you know what I mean, right? Try to make more money to pay the bills. So if you're a service provider, you're getting a project, right? A big project. First thing is take 10%, 20% off. Put it aside for business development. Business development is about improving your brand image, building a brand story, polishing up your brand identity, polishing up your website, right? Or investing in your lead funnel, whatever it is, okay? It could be online traffic. Well, in that case, invest in content strategy. It could be Facebook. Then in that case, invest in Facebook advertising. If you don't know how to invest in that, how to do those advertising, and you've tried it in the past and you lost money, then hire a professional. Yes, so if you have $5,000, hire a professional for $2,500, and even though they don't actually do much, at least you will learn how to do Facebook advertising, okay? And so on and so forth. So invest in that. Number two, always, always have a backup plan, right? Don't put your eggs in one basket. If your main source of income, if your main source of revenue, if your main source of business is Google, then it's a red light. It's a huge warning for you. It's unbelievable how many business owners out there just continue through life. They do business, of course, and then they're enjoying themselves, they're traveling, they're doing this and that, while their major source of revenue is Google traffic, because it can stop overnight. And yeah, I mean, I've seen personally hundreds and thousands of stories. In fact, I was in that position once upon a time, going back years ago, right? It's almost 8 years now. But of course, I went from, our agency was going so well, went down to zero because of Google. And somehow I turned it around and I turned it back into $1 million agency, but it took a toll. And so, I mean, if there's one thing that you take away from this video, do not depend on one source of revenue, right? Always have multiple sources. Even if those sources are not so great, slowly invest in them, slow by slow, so that if you have 100% of revenue from one source, let's just say Google in this example, then your aim should be to sort of take a little bit of percentage from that, right? Take 10% out of that in the next 6 months, and so that you get 90% from Google and 10% from Facebook, right? Start investing in that. Start planning. Start educating yourself in that. Hire professionals. Get on a consultancy call and learn, right? Next year, make that 20%. I'm just saying, these are examples. I don't know your particular situation. Anyway, I know I'm rambling on and on and on, and these are very obvious things, right? But I wanted you to watch that movie, Uncut Gems, with the context of what I've just talked about, and think of it when you're watching that. If you're in business, if you're watching that movie, think of it as you making decisions for your business. What kind of decisions you're making? What kind of priorities do you have? Are you investing in your business? Are you investing in marketing? Are you investing in branding? Do you have a strategy? Have you invested in strategy? I just did a video recently on brand strategy, right? I recommend you watch it. Strategy, man. Strategy is a must, right? I know I'm getting a little worked up because, yeah, it is critical. It is life or go watch strategy, think, compare, analyze, and, make changes, right? I hope you enjoyed this movie. Till my next one, take care.